In this video, I want to talk about the importance of a painting's initial structure. Basically, how build and shape can impact the finished product, whether you use a pencil outline, underpainting, or just rough shapes. I've talked before about the flexibility of oil paints, how the fact that you can sculpt and mold oil paints when working wet on wet has saved me many times, letting me fix the various mistakes that I make. But it's still important to get that initial structure right. And it's not just the placement of facial features, it's also how they are in relation to each other. We're trying to represent a three-dimensional image in a 2D space, so we have to simulate that with the right angles, sizes, and other methods to make the head seem like a sphere. Even though oil paints are flexible, it's hard for me to notice this type of mistake until I've almost finished the painting. And typically at that point, I'm just going to move on to the next one. Lately, I've had some issues wrapping these facial features around the sphere in an accurate way. This painting on screen now is the perfect example. I think part of the issue is I'm just diving in. I'm in a rush to get to the real meat of the painting. I really need to slow down and take my time in plotting this stuff out. For some context and background, I've been trying to freehand paintings as much as possible without using any measuring tools, proportional dividers, or anything like that, as much as I do love those. The hope here is that doing a lot of freehanding maybe will help prepare me a bit to eventually paint from life. And even if I don't get to that live model portrait painting level, I think this sort of practice is just generally good for me. But even without measuring, I think I could still do a better job if I slowed down the first steps a little bit and take my time to get the shapes and angles more appropriately arranged. So back to this painting. My biggest mistake, I think, was that my features were tilted incorrectly. The planes of the subject's face, the horizontal lines across the eyes, nose, and mouth, didn't run parallel to each other. I obviously didn't notice this at all early on, but once I got to the end and I was really studying the painting, something just seemed off looking at it. After I kind of pondered this a little bit, I realized that the mouth and eyes weren't on the same plane, as if they kind of were chopped off from a different portrait and smushed together. This is actually a mistake that I've made quite a few times lately, and I think I really need to tighten this up because I've been seeing it. Once you see the same mistake over and over again, it's kind of a hint that you need to focus up on that aspect. Of course, all my paintings do show various giveaways of me being a novice. And that's not to say I'm trying to roast myself or anything like that, but I know an expert level painter would see a lot of things like what I've discussed in this video right away when they look at my paintings. And that's not a bad thing at all. As I mentioned in my last video, self-critique can be a really useful part of the learning process. The quote from Emerson and Richard Smith's book says it best: "Every artist was first an amateur." It's reassuring to know that even my favorite oil painters had to start somewhere, and maybe even went through some of the same trial and error that I'm currently working through. So on this painting, even though I was able to recover to some extent on some of the details and finishing, again, I see the errors here. But overall, I'd say it recovered pretty nicely. So not a complete disaster, but definitely room for improvement here. So that is all I have for this conversation on outlines and starting paintings on the right foot. Let me know in the comments if you have any similar experiences you'd want to relate. I'll let this painting finish out. Thanks for watching.